All right, so our topic today is capacity building, building capacity. And as usual, we're going to start with a brief reflection. So we invite you to ensure you're seated comfortably. You can experiment with eyes open if you'd like. And feel free to take in a moment or two to enjoy a couple of breaths, helping the body to really settle into this moment. So a breath in, and that slow release of air, helping the body to really relax into this moment. And then perhaps another breath. And again, with that slow release of air, the body letting go of any tension it might be holding, any even hidden tension. And then continuing to observe the breath, but almost watching it from a distance. Just observing the body breathing. And my attention, my mind, following the waves of the breath. As if the breath is carrying my mind. Carrying my mind inwards to a very calm space inside. A space that is not filled with any worldly or day-to-day thoughts. The feeling that my attention, my mind has arrived at a very sacred space inside. Very peaceful space. A space that's reserved for deeper reflection, deeper understanding. Simple, uncluttered, quiet. Like an inner meditation room inside my head. And in that space, we each have a mirror of the self. So often we use the outer world as our mirror, trying to get a sense of ourselves through roles, responsibilities, possessions, people, actions we perform. But here in this quiet space inside, I have an inner mirror that sees beyond the physical, that reflects who I am at quite a deep level, that can reveal my core values, my dreams, my aspirations and hopes, and the most interesting reflection, my highest potential. The mirror in which I can see my highest potential. And the essence of spiritual study is to bring that image in the mirror and make it my present state of being. to take on that reflection, that highest potential. That's the entire point of spirituality. A pathway to living what I see reflected in that inner mirror. Always wanting to keep that image of my highest potential in front. And moving towards it with complete trust in the self. Om Shanti. So, capacity building. I know that the coachable was a very popular topic a week or two ago. So that will definitely be a part of capacity building. The essence of coachability was the capacity to be able to wiggle out from underneath the dominance of ego, of feeling self-conscious rather than soul-conscious, self-conscious. So to be able to become free from that, that's really important in building capacity. So as always with inner fitness, we like to look first, not at the spiritual concept of the theme, but see if we can look at first just the physical. So looking at fitness, athletics, etc. What does capacity building mean as a physical endeavor? I know you want to leap into spiritual, so try to control yourself. Just as a physical, think of an athlete, a physical athlete, a sprinter, a swimmer, a skier, whatever appeals to you. What does capacity building mean there, and how do they reach that full capacity? So again, if you prefer to chat, you're welcome to, or you can unmute and speak. Your voice might be recorded, but your image will not be. So feel free to share capacity building for the physical athlete. So we have here building physical strength and endurance. Definitely. Continuous, we have a how here. Continuous, dedicated practice. Mm-hmm.
Discipline.
Discipline.
We're talking about
how. Good rest and training. Fantastic. Both are very important. Sometimes we skip over the rest part, but yeah, good rest and training.
Team building.
Team building. Awareness.
And part of the how, structure.
Have a structure. So we say practice, but I need to have the right program to practice. So a structure that goes with discipline as well.
A good coach.
A good coach. So this they all start to overlap, don't they? Almost starts like the healing session where you have the right method and the right prescription and the word right is super important in all of this, right? We want to unlock something, some potential. So I need to have the right thing going on. And I want to ideally have a coach who has that knowledge of the right method. I think it's heartbreaking when I watch souls in a physical environment, putting out a lot of effort, but to the wrong method. And so they're not really getting anywhere. In fact, for this session, I was remembering one soul that came to group fitness classes, had been coming for years and years. And they always stood in the same place in the room, same class, and really saw no change in what was happening with their workouts. No change. And that's okay. Maybe they didn't want any change. Maybe that maintenance was what they were interested in. That's fine. I remember one day I was subbing this class, and you could just feel that there was, the reason I say this is because this was one of the souls that had come to the establishment with a comment that they wanted newness. Now, when someone says they want newness, this is when I find it interesting. So we'll come back to that. They wanted newness in the programming. They wanted some newness. They felt they needed some injection of some change. So I remember some of the class and watching them and knowing there is no more potential in that soul, whether or not they're interested or they've made the connection between capacity building and newness. I don't know if that connection was made. So I'm sort of just focusing on just them in the class, and I'm really, cueing them. And I don't know what happened. For a moment, this other being came out and they showed stuff they've never showed before. And I was like, where is this coming from? And it's like, you've had this all the time. And then it retreated back inside this other possibility. So the reason I find it interesting is that, with capacity building, there's this beautiful story that I know so little of it. So I've only extracted the bit that I really, really like. And you've heard it many times. It's in the Mahabharata. It's about the native, the Beel, the native, and how Arjun, the great archer, had the best of all facilities. He had the best coach ever, the best trainer, archery trainer. He had wonderful facilities. He had everything. And yes, he became, the whole epic really revolves around him. He became a wonderful archer. But outside of the palace, there was a native who also had deep love for the practice, very deep love for the practice, very simple soul, but deep, deep love for the practice. And he didn't have a great teacher. He didn't have great facilities, but he had deep love for the practice. And he became a better archer than Arjun. I love this story. The end, at least in my books. I think there's more to it. In my books, that's the end. So when a soul comes to us and says, I want newness, I always get a little bit suspicious, because it comes under the umbrella that my capacity is dependent on things outside, that we need to change the programming, or we need to change the instructor, or we need to change the facilities in order for them to experience that newness. And what is that newness they want? Is it that I want a different workout and not, or is it that I want a deeper mastery of what I'm already doing? Now, we've showed you on a few occasions, and we will not torture you again today, but we've shown you a few times the video with the great, ballerina from the ABT, American Ballet Theater, Misty Copeland. We've showed a few times. We won't again today because it will just put you to sleep. But we have here one of the top ballerinas in the world. And she puts these videos out of her with a ballet master. It's a very humble thing, because I'm sure many people will go to the site and think she's not doing anything difficult, or what's the big deal? Because of having no idea whatsoever, of not knowing the difference between quantity and quality. totally missing what's going on there. So when I say I want to build capacity, first I need to understand these two basic things. Is it about, because when we said the Bill had great love, he really had a love for the practice, a love for quality. This is why he became so good. He had very simple materials, tools, no teacher, nothing. It's like something has to be happening inside. It can't be dependent always on these external forces to build capacity. So that thing that has to be happening inside, that inner drive, that sense of I can do, there's more in me, I can do better, there's more in me. And when we say better, to not confuse quantity and quality. So when we see these great elite athletes doing very, very basic things to sort of, be open to the possibility that is of not just dismissing it, that they really don't have any capacity whatsoever. Because when we watch this video with Misty Copeland doing very basic, it's called a tendu and dégagé, very, very basic exercise. But, the ballet master won't even let her get very far, in terms of executing it. And she's just sweating buckets. She's just like dying here. It's fascinating to watch when you've seen her perform far more advanced and difficult things. And yet, how is she building capacity? She's doing this very, very basic exercise, with such deep love that there's something inside of me. It's not about bigger lights or better costumes or bigger audiences or more advanced steps. It's about deepening the quality to access, very interested in the incognito. And I had a great fortune this morning. I had a training with a couple of clients, and they both were very much the same. In fact, I don't have many clients, I'll be honest with you. It's only because of the pandemic I have any. I usually just have one and a half, something like that. Because no one's really interested in what I'm doing. Because all I'm going to do is really basic stuff. And so the first client, they started and they're going at it the usual way, and it's quite disastrous. And then it's something, I just keep cueing them for basic technical correction over and over. You have your hand up.
No, it's clapping.
Oh, sorry. I thought you might be giving blessings. So eventually I started to notice that he started to slow down, do far less reps, but with so much care. And you could see he was actually accessing higher quality execution, greater capacity. It was quite fascinating. And he discovered it himself. He turned to me and said, I need to do it more carefully. Yeah, with more quality. We're not going to do a lot of reps. At one point we were doing push-ups, and I said, please stop. Please stop. I said, we're going to do it with this apparatus from your knees. All right, we're only going to do 4. And they were beautiful. They were a beautiful thing. So that's when he started to build capacity. And the second client was, again, I didn't elicit the information. They just started to share from themselves. He said, I really like it when we do this kind of workout where we get to work on awareness, the point Richard brought up, this awareness and slow controlled alignment. They said, yeah, no, I'm totally with you. This will build capacity. So we started to talk about this breed of athletes. This will be our bridge to spirituality. This breed of athletes, often under the umbrella of calisthenic athletes. Now, they can deadlift, 250, whatever. They can if they want. But they're such an interesting breed of athletes in that they love alignment, technique, mastery of the basics. they are just ridiculously strong as a result. So strong. And there was two stories I'm thinking of one of these athletes. And one of them, he was in a competition against a CrossFit athlete. So this is an Olympic lifter in essence. And they had to do a series of exercises back to back. And from the get-go, it was so fascinating because, you know, they were interviewed at the very beginning, how they feel going to the competition, and the CrossFit athlete was like, oh, I feel really, really good. I've got this. I'm just gonna nail it. I'm gonna win. And then they interviewed the calisthenic athlete who just had a completely different demeanor. He said, I am so honored to be in this competition with my very esteemed colleague, and I'm sure that he will win. I'll just do my best. I mean, it was night and day, night and day. And so then they set off, and our little CrossFit athletes just going at it and crazy. And the last exercise they were going to do was a freestanding handstand on parallel bars. It's quite a challenge. So they're going along, and our little calisthenic athlete, you know, he's moving along very beautifully. His exercises are very beautiful execution. He seems to be a little behind, but you know, he's just moving along like the tortoise and the hare. He's just making his way. And then they come to the final exercise. They're exhausted, of course. The final exercise is this handstand, freestanding handstand on parallel bars. And our calisthenic athlete, beautiful execution. This is nothing for him. Our CrossFit athlete is all over the place, and of course does not win this crazy competition as a result. But it was very interesting watching the two different approaches. One was very calm. It was almost meditative to watch, and just so quality. And the other was kind of craziness. But the other thing I had seen again was our calisthenic athlete and a CrossFit athlete training, doing a video where they were demonstrating a workout protocol. And the CrossFit athlete was trying to show progressions. He had a model with them, and they were trying to show progressions. So at one point, they had to do what's called double unders, where the skipping rope goes under your feet twice on every hop. And so they're showing it very easy. And they said, now, if you can't do this, you can always just do a single revolution. And so the model was trying to do this, but he couldn't actually go down to that progression. So he kept tripping over the rail, and they were killing themselves laughing. And quite frankly, they were almost mocking someone who would have to do a single revolution. And then we looked at the calisthenic athlete. He specifically chose a model who was perhaps coming from a deconditioned background, beginner, and he was so sweet with this model. He would show advanced, but he preferred to stay with the beginner version and do these with the model. It was again night and day. And I really thought, which one would actually build capacity? And actually began, this is where we segue into spirituality. It actually began to be beyond the physical. It started to bleed into something we call character. Because at the end of the day, everything is based on character. Now, as it turned out, the calisthenic athlete I'm talking about also has a rigorous practice of yoga. He has a very meditative demeanor, very humble, and he's quite philosophical, and he's very philanthropic. So we start to see there's a whole constellation of things that go with a capacity builder. Whether it's a physical endeavor or a spiritual endeavor, it doesn't matter. It's the same character that you're going to need for any particular modality you're building capacity in. It doesn't matter. It could be cooking. It could be anything. You need the same character traits. So back to you. What are the character traits that you will need in any endeavor to build capacity? What are the character traits? Again, you can unmute or type. or I don't know, charades. Patience, that's huge. Patience, we got it twice.
Faith.
Humility, faith, patience, humility, faith.
Love for quality.
Love for quality. So that goes under humility, that you're not so interested in the show. Quantity will come. Dedication, commitment, yeah. Stay the course because it's going to go up and down.
A lot of self-trust.
Self-trust, self-confidence, all the self-respect qualities. Balance, yeah, absolutely. We do tend to be like monkeys, swinging from one extreme. Either I get it perfect or I'm a failure. There's nothing in between. That's going to be very difficult if you expect to go in and get it perfect. I'm going to do a handstand. I don't know how many injured people we have walking around because they tried to do it perfect the first time. So open to that journey. Concentration. This is huge. Beautiful. So again, I could be talking about a physical training, or I could be talking about a spiritual practice when we use these words. It's the exact same character profile you need to be open to building capacity. So yeah, Nora.
I know it's connected to balance, which you mentioned, but I was thinking about letting go of the outcome.
So this is where we have that crossover with the coachable in some ways. So we used the term coachable a couple of weeks ago, but it really was about becoming free of that ego. And ego's very, very concerned. It can concentrate. Ego has concentration and dedication and commitment. It's very concerned about the image or the show. So that's going to be a huge, and sometimes we say, okay, I'm going to crush that ego. I'm going to kill that ego. No. Yes.
Sorry, just when you were sharing about Misty Copeland.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, I mean, she was an example, but
Yeah.
for her to do something like that on an overall level, it may not look like something like big,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of her performance.
Yeah.
But she feels a benefit because I know the background about the injury.
Right. Right.
So I guess I was thinking about the love for doing something that's so invisible. Yeah. Like, you know, the benefit has to be, it has to be for you. And I think we always jump over that because we're like, oh, who's listening? Who's taking benefit? You know, are there the numbers?
Yeah, and I just saw a couple of more words come up: introversion, forgiving, and it crosses over. I mean, this has become a focus of mine because of so much wanting. You know, every day in our spiritual practice, we have put in front of us the capacity of the human spirit every day. And you just create such a hunger, you know, like we can be such kind beings, such loving beings, such benevolent beings, you know, it's like, I want to be that, but ego will keep interfering. And so I need to develop all of these self-relationships, the self-respect, the self-love, the self-confidence, the self-trust, the self-patience. All of these sort of relationship with the self is so critical. So when I saw forgiving, you know, and the idea of coming with an injury, spiritual injury, you know, injuries happen because I make a mistake and I injure the body. And a spiritual injury is really an injury to the heart, that I've made a mistake, I've gone against my highest ideal, and I don't quite know, it's sitting heavy in the conscience, and I don't quite know what to do with it. And so a really robust spiritual practice has to have a model of understanding that will build a healthy relationship with the self, that enables one to build a really, really good relationship with the self. I was reminded this morning of two, when I was very young in ballet, and two dancers that I crossed paths with who were much older, they were mature. And ironically, they were also both named Judy, and they really stand out in my mind. And one of them, I mean, this has nothing to do with the topic, but just the sweetness of the soul. My parents were both very, very busy. They were both working parents, and to chauffeur your kids around for dance class was quite a haul. So it would inevitably happen that they thought they made arrangements, but they hadn't, and they forgot about you completely. And that happened one night, because it was always after school, so it was late in the evening, and I was completely, everyone left. I was completely abandoned in the hall where we had ballet classes. All the lights were off, and no one was coming to pick me up. I was doomed. And the only soul that was left was Judy, this dancer who I absolutely adored. You know, she was older. She just looked like a sugar plum fairy all the time. And she saw me there, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay? Are the parents coming?" I said, "I don't think they're coming." And she's like, "I will drive you home." Now, she has no idea where I live. No idea. And she's like, "I will drive you home." To this day, I have no idea how far she went out of her way to get me home. She did not care. She's like, "I'm driving you home." And it touched me so deeply. Again, it was about character. She was the greatest dancer in the world to me because of her character. She was a healthy dancer. You have no idea how unhealthy dancers are. Very insecure. There's a reason that Misty Copeland is secure. She had to earn it the hard way, but they have to be healthy in character. So the second dancer, named Judy, she was with the National Ballet Company, and she had come to our school to train with her ballet master, who was giving special classes to us. So she had to come with them. So we would watch her rehearse. And from the get-go, I thought, that is one healthy dancer. Now, when I say healthy, I don't mean physically healthy. I mean, she actually did look physically healthy. She didn't look like she was gonna, you could, and she'd fall over. She looked physically healthy. But you could just tell she actually likes herself. She's not insecure. She's not competing or comparing, or if someone criticized, because we'd have to sit and watch her, because all that happens to a ballet dancer is you're corrected the whole time. You do not get compliments. You're just constant correction, constant correction. That's all. She allowed us to just watch this happen to her, you know, constant. And she just would always be like, "Yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, I'll do." The coachability was off the radar. And she would always come afterwards and always spend time with us and always ask us about us. This is very rare. And I thought, wow, she's so healthy. She, in the sense that she was so comfortable with herself. You know, her capacity to forgive mistakes just seemed to come so easily. So then she could move along quickly. She didn't have to spend so much time. I've told the other story of the soul who made one mistake and it caused a train wreck, and she just couldn't, you know, because she couldn't forgive herself that the train wreck happened. So it's super important to have a really, really healthy relationship. And this comes down to the heart and understanding spiritually what we mean by heart. You know, when we say love for the self, trust for the self, this has to come from the heart. This can't just be an intellectual exercise, you know, things I repeat to myself. I love myself. I love myself. It's just not going deep enough when it's just an affirmation, which is not to devalue affirmations, but they just need to go very deeply. And there's going to be a lot of resistance, mostly ego. Right? Blocking it from coming in. Ego has information on us, and ego likes to use it against us. And so it's very difficult to get past ego because it's always using this. You made this mistake 20 years ago. You made this mistake. I've got the goods on you. And it's like, okay, but it was 20 years. It doesn't matter. You made that mistake. So ego is very harsh and kind of won't let us. But what exactly do we mean by heart? So the heart has a perfect memory none of your mistakes. The heart has a perfect memory of your highest potential. Ego has a memory of your mistakes, but your heart, which sometimes in the study we call the intellect, your heart has a perfect memory of your highest potential. Now, ego is standing there with a memory of all your mistakes, sitting heavy on your head. How do I get past ego, access this memory in the heart so that I can have that love and trust and respect for the self? How do I, this dynamic needs to happen so that I can embark on the path of honoring the heart, honoring that memory, building that capacity. So how do I get past ego to the heart? Any ideas? Any suggestions? Do I like bludgeon it? Kill it?
I mean, they understand what self-respect really means now. We use that word before, even before being in the study. I don't think we really know what it means because it's so externalized.
Yeah. Yeah.
For it to really replace ego.
Yeah, no, we just keep going on the same information ego's feeding us to try and create. So we have here a suggestion to rollerblade by. And then we have a better suggestion, higher awareness and let go. I don't know if the rollerblade is going to work, but hey, why not? Maybe if you do the second thing while rollerblading, right? That might go well. Higher awareness and let go. Yeah. So this is, again, we're back to what is a robust spiritual practice. You know, I'm kind of constantly trying to get to that higher awareness, but ego keeps sort of overtaking the conversation. It keeps injecting with its own script. So we have this principle with energy in a closed system called entropy, where when we're in a closed system, it just kind of degrades and devolves and be more chaotic and more waste. Somehow we're going to have to open the system and introduce something new to re-energize it. So the same goes for us spiritually. We're kind of in a closed system. We just keep the same ideas, just kind of keep floating around. Right? We're trying to get past, but ego just keeps floating the same script, telling us the same ideas. You know, maybe different forms, but it's really the same stuff dressed up in different ways. And we just can't seem to get past it. We need to open the system. We need new ideas. We need a shift in our paradigm. We need a bigger picture of ourselves. You know, and it's very interesting when you look at, say, souls who are in abusive relationships, and people always ask, why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave? It was clearly abusive. Why didn't you leave? And it's really not a fair question if you're not in their head, right? It's easy for you because you're outside. You can see very clearly, no one should treat anybody this way. You can see that clearly. But when you're in their head, there's a completely different script going on that makes it very challenging to break out. So we've got scripts in our head, mostly informed by ego, when we say body consciousness, and we find it very difficult. We need to break out. We need the introduction of new ideas, and a robust spiritual practice should provide those new ideas. Now, when we come to something like Raj Yoga, the spiritual study of Raj Yoga, you know, it's an ancient study, and it's been said that this is a study that's been taught by God himself. Very ancient study. The Gita is a memorial spoken by God himself. And it really kind of blows wide open the function of that being. Now, I know just before I came into Raj Yoga, different people were making suggestions of, you know, they knew I was searching for something, and they suggest, you should read this, or you should read that. And one of the things that was suggested was some, I think, Sufism or something like this, but I'm very bad at reading other literature, period. I just kind of open to random pages and skim them. So that was this case. They had recommended a book. I opened it to a random page. And in that page, it said, you are the seeker is looking for the teacher. I read that. I was like, yeah, that totally describes. I want to understand. I know that's the only way. I can't kill and crush, and it's just not, there's no way you're going to win hand-to-hand combat with ego. It's just not going to happen. It's too smart. It's just not going to happen. But love melts ego. This is like the Wicked Witch of the West situation. Love melts ego. It's very, I mean, we'll have a whole nother session on the symbolism of the Wizard of Oz, but if you recall, when you pour water on the witch, that's how she was destroyed. Fantastic symbolism, because we always talk about the water of knowledge, the water of understanding. Understanding is so powerful. If I can get the right understanding, this is what a good coach provides, is they explain so that they can understand what's going on. I mean, that's what I find very exciting as a coach, is I have to give the right cueing, the right understanding to access that capacity. And so I need to get a coach who is going to give me that right understanding, that right cueing, that's outside of the script that ego keeps feeding me. Otherwise, I really can't embark on this journey of capacity. It'll all just be more show. I'll look like I'm going somewhere, but inside I've actually not moved anywhere. And so I always think of God, this being, as the coach. He is a spiritual coach. And his function is to give me right understanding. And the moment that being sort of suggests, well, actually, you are a spiritual being, not a physical being. You are a spiritual being already. Wow, this is really thinking outside the box. I hadn't gone there yet. So I know that I'm getting access to ideas, this higher awareness Richard spoke of, ideas that are outside of that closed system that we say at the jail of ego, outside of that closed system. And I can start on that journey of getting my relationship with the self in a place that I can actually start to build capacity. And you're like, whoa, I haven't even gotten to the starting line. I haven't even started to build capacity. No, I will not be able to authentically build capacity without a healthy relationship with the self. It will always go into the category of ego, which is just show. I know I've shared many times the push-up story. Maybe Nora should share it because I've shared it so many times.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I hope I'm sharing the right story.
Any story is good at this point.
I don't even remember who was the instructor, but the challenge was to ask. Unfortunately, it was segregated between female
brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters. How many push-ups we can do with a certain amount of time. And so the brothers went first, and they basically did as much as they could. And
they went for quantity.
And I don't know, I know I commented on this, if maybe the sisters were at an advantage because they could see poor quality. So in a sense, they got a chance to see a mirror. So when it came to them, it was, their focus really was on doing perfect push-ups based on the mechanics, I suppose, of fitness. And so, yes, fewer, but definitely did the right one.
Yeah. So if I have, I loved the first quality that Soul shared, which was patience. This is such a product of self-love, self-trust. To have that patience. Okay, maybe it doesn't look like I'm having any results right now. Maybe everyone else is going ahead of me. And we have the story of the tortoise and the hare. We have the story of the emperor's seed. Maybe it looks like others are having results, but if there's self-love, I actually don't compare. I just look at, we had this beautiful word this morning, straightforward and honest. I just look honestly at what am I doing relative to the instructions I've been giving. And I trust the instructions, I trust the coach. What am I doing? Am I executing them accurately or just for show? Do I need to go to a lesser, a lower progression of the exercise? Maybe I'm not able to execute it at that level. Maybe I need it. And there's no shame. I don't know how many times in a physical setting I have to say, okay, we're going to do push-ups. There is no shame in doing them from your knees. It's painful to watch souls do push-ups from their toes, and it is a train wreck. There's really no benefit, zero, other than feeding ego. There's no benefit. So maybe I need to step back, again, going back to the foundations, no shame. And have I mastered the foundations, that patience to do it honestly and authentically? The concentration spoken of is really just love. We have no problem concentrating on things we love. I love chocolate. I have no problem concentrating on chocolate. You don't have to tell me, concentrate on chocolate, concentrate. It's like, I have no problem. So concentration, again, is back to that love. Introversion, back to that love, that self-love. All of these come from that healthy relationship with the self. So it's so worthwhile. I love the second client I had today. I find this so extremely refreshing to be around. And I'll end with this story. She is, I'm certain, her mother is just a few years older than me. And her mother had, so I'm certainly old enough to be her mother. She's in her early 20s. But I'll be honest with you, the first time I met her, which was in her teens, she walked by me and I said, oh, hi, how you doing? As if I knew her. I was convinced I knew her. And not only was I convinced I knew her, I was convinced I knew her because she went to school with me. Now she's over 30 years younger than me, but I'm convinced because she just radiates this maturity. And her mother is world champion, world-class athlete, can be huge pressure. She initially, when she was young, went into the same sport as her mother. Could be huge pressure, I'm sure there was. And you look at her and she's just so healthy, and she's a little bit on the large side, and she's aware of it and the whole thing. But there's just something fascinating about her. And I know her parents made it top priority that their children respect themselves. And wow, do you see it? Wow. Wow. They are so lucky that was the priority. Because when I listen to her share, she has no problem speaking very lightly about, she was saying, yeah, whenever we were in a recital, I would be the tallest one, the biggest one. And they put us in these costumes and my belly was always, I just look really goofy. But you don't get the sense of any self-degrading, nothing. It's almost as if she's detached from the image completely and just really very comfortable with herself. She's a pleasure to work with, a pleasure. And you just watch, within a session, you see the capacity build. It's hysterical when we're together. So it's so important. Take the time. And we have, in our practice, we call this building a healthy relationship with the self, soul consciousness. Getting to know the self free. If I'm not the body, I'm not the roles, I'm not the responsibility, free of all these temporary things that come and go. We call it external validation. If I take away all those things, what's left? Who am I? So we say you're this spiritual being who has these amazing innate qualities. Get to know yourself that way. This is the building of self-respect. And then when it comes to the forgiveness piece, we actually don't need to be forgiven for anything, but it's sitting heavy in our conscience. So this is when the understanding that we receive from an outside observer, such as God, can really help us to heal any negative feelings we have towards the self. This is critical to embarking on the path of capacity building. We have the two first students in this study named Brahma Baba and Mama is behind me here. They were incredible capacity builders in terms of building the capacity of the self, absolutely remarkable. And they, was asked, what was the basis of them being able to be so disciplined, and not in a harsh way, with love? Discipline is self-love. So disciplined, so dedicated, so committed, so concentrated, so careful, so attentive. And the answer was, they knew who they were. They had that self-respect. That's the answer. It's not that I need particularly clever, or I need to be a certain height, or I need to know certain people, or I just need to have self-respect. So it's very beautiful. I always say, if you're wondering, what spiritual practice, make sure that spiritual practice has as its foundation the building of self-respect. You deserve at least that much. So I'm looking at the time. I know we have to end there. Is there any final comments or questions souls have?
I don't know if this makes any sense, but when you're talking about self-respect, I was thinking about a boxer when he gets hit and he gets dazed a bit. And I guess it was making me think about when your self-respect builds, and if ego ever gets involved and there's insult or whatever, to be able to watch that. And it kind of feels like being dazed, like your capacity to recover hopefully becomes faster and faster. And I think maybe I'm not sure what was you're sharing, but I think perhaps maybe what Richard was sharing about balance, that we think we're going to be perfect right away, that we expect that we won't be affected internally,
right?
When ego gets involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, a good trainer will caution you or notify you of what you might expect as you embark on this journey, so you're not surprised or blindsided. It might still happen, but at least having that information is really helpful, what to expect. And so very often as you're training someone into a mechanic, you say, okay, so this is going to feel a little bit awkward or a little bit different. It's okay. So it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just different from what you've been doing. I know that one of the students who is Pilates instructor shared this wonderful story of, she works a lot with postural alignment. This is the foundation of Pilates. And that so often our postures, due to the way that we work and our lack of movement, gets very out of whack, our physical. So many people have they can be so, we say the ribs are so behind the rest. It's just so bad. The curves of the spine are almost inverse. It's so bad. But that's become familiar. I won't say comfortable, because the body's crying out in pain, but it's become familiar. And when they are actually adjusted into proper alignment, say, oh my gosh, this feels so weird. This feels so weird. It's like, yeah, that's perfect. It will feel weird. It's good to know that, so you don't feel like something's wrong. No, nothing. It's just so different from what had become familiar, right? So it's very important that we're aware, and we're very gentle transitioning between what had become habituated or familiar back to what is healthy or natural. Yeah. So let's take a moment to reflect before we go off into our healthy, self-respectful day. As I sit here, I take my focus to that place behind the forehead where it feels thoughts originate, where the activity of thinking is happening into my inner world, where I, the thinker, resides. The windows of my eyes, my physical eyes, sometimes pull me out of this inner world. Spending so much time looking outside, trying to find myself out there, living from the outside in. And there comes a point when I don't want to do that anymore. That is such a pivotal and powerful moment, because it's a declaration of self-respect. I want to understand myself, heal the relationship with the self, care for the self, know the self, the true self. And so I start to build this beautiful space inside, this space of introversion, where I will come to know the self, my inner classroom. And perhaps the teacher will become the one who is an expert in self-respect, the one who we know is God. It is really that being who never loses their self-respect, never has ego. I create the space, and I patiently, with deep trust, spend time in that space, creating a sense of peace, of openness, readiness, invoking a change, a return. Whatever resources are required, whether it's God, different understanding, I am open for that return journey to my full potential through the foundation of self-respect. Om Shanti. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. I should know what theme is next week. Oh my goodness, somehow we've gotten to May. I don't know what the theme is. We will figure that out. We will let you know. So, wow, that flew by. April flew by. Okay. So we will have to come up with all new themes for the month of May. Maybe it'll be all about being a mother to the self, who knows. So do take care until next time. Thank you so much for joining.